Imagine that the most evil versions of your favorite cartoons cross into the real world and come to kill, because today I bring you a brutal and eerie episode of The X-Files that seems taken from an animated nightmare. It all begins at 2 in the afternoon in a rather lonely park in Eastwood, Connecticut, where a boy named Andrew plays with his doll named Mr. Smiles. Beside him is his friend Emily, who has come with her mother Anna to accompany Diane, Andrew's mother. In the middle of this scene, Diane receives a phone call from who seems to be her ex-partner as she demands that he stop calling her. At that precise moment, Andrew observes how another Mr. Smiles appears among the trees. Diane, immersed in her argument, ignores her son, and only after hanging up does she realize that Andrew has disappeared. Although she shouts his name, the child does not return as he has followed Mr. Smiles into the forest. Andrew soon sees the doll again and decides to follow it, but after losing sight of it once more, he is surprised and intercepted by something unknown. Hours pass and Andrew does not return, so his parents and the police begin the search in the forest. It doesn't take long before one of the officers, named Wentworth, finds traces of Andrew's mutilated body next to his doll and alerts the rest of the team, including his fellow officer Rick, who is also Andrew's father. Upon seeing the carnage, Rick cannot contain himself, and his colleagues must prevent him from approaching the body to avoid compromising the crime scene. The next day, Agents Fox Mulder and Dana Scully arrive at the scene while Chief Strong recounts what has happened so far. Scully examines the photographs in the file that show Andrew's body and mentions that, according to the coroner, the death was due to asphyxiation from a blow to the trachea and a fracture in the cervical vertebrae of the neck. Despite this, Strong insists that it is most likely an animal attack, like the coyotes that are abundant in that forest and in the town. Scully comments that, as far as they know, coyotes don't usually attack humans, but Strong claims that there seems to be a new predator of that species. Mulder confirms this theory by explaining that it is a hybrid between a coyote and a wolf. Having said this, Strong demands to know what interest the FBI has in this case. Mulder clarifies that their department has jurisdiction when a direct relative of a police officer is murdered. Immediately, Strong understands that the agents suspect a homicide. Scully expresses that she does not rule out that possibility, since being a small town with a close-knit community, if the killer sees that the case is dismissed as an accident, it could encourage them to continue with the murders. Wentworth mentions that the evidence does not support this hypothesis. However, Scully explains that the marks on Andrew's neck do support it and that the bites could have been caused by animals that arrived when Andrew was already dead. Strong warns that the agents cannot come and make assumptions that the local police have already dismissed. But Mulder reveals that Scully is a medical doctor, so she knows what she's talking about. Having said that, Scully orders a search for a man between 19 and 49 years old with a criminal record and points out that it is likely the killer lives near the park or frequents it, as the evidence indicates he knew Andrew's routine. As they move towards the location where the body is found, Scully says she doesn't understand why the hybrid coyote was mentioned. Mulder informs her that one of these animals was seen last year, but he is thinking more about a hellhound, as in 1658, a Puritan midwife named Goody Bishop was accused of witchcraft and sleeping with the devil. The legend says she went up in flames along with the town that gathered to watch her suffer. Scully argues that this woman was an innocent tragic victim of religious persecution. Even so, Mulder makes it clear that while false witch hunts did exist, that doesn't mean witches didn't really exist. Although he acknowledges that the hybrid coyote does not inhabit Connecticut, he suspects the existence of witchcraft practitioners in the town. Scully dismisses his beliefs and resorts to logic, reminding him that the only demon is usually a depraved killer. Already in front of Andrew's corpse before starting the autopsy, Scully mentions that seeing a dead child is always difficult, no matter how many times they've done it. Mulder understands her pain as he knows that seeing an innocent life taken away, it's impossible not to take it personally. Scully proceeds to inspect the body and confirms the lacerations she saw in the photos, but she also observes that a significant part of the abdomen was torn away and the fracture in the neck indicates that he was violently shaken to death. Once this is done, Scully suggests that perhaps the killer is Andrew's father and that he is being protected by his fellow police officers. At that moment, Mulder discovers that Andrew's feet are covered with something similar to salt, a detail that was not mentioned in the report. Additionally, there is a witness who has not been questioned. Emily, the daughter of Strong, the chief of police. Scully recalls that Emily's mother, Anna, was present, but Mulder still finds the situation extremely strange. Later, Andrew's funeral begins. Through tears, Diane reproaches Rick for not having Andrew's body at the ceremony. Diane notices a stifled sigh from Strong. After the ceremony, he approaches Diane to express his condolences, but she cannot speak and walks away crying. For his part, Rick asks Wentworth what the FBI has said about his son's body. Suspecting that something is being hidden from him, Waywood tells him that, according to Agent Scully, the profile of the murderer is of a man between 19 and 49 years old with previous convictions who probably enjoys the pain of his victims. With this information, Rick leaves determined to investigate on his own. Meanwhile, Anna demands explanations from Strong about why the FBI wants to talk to Emily. Strong makes it clear that they need to cooperate as their position is at risk if the tragedy turns into a homicide case. Thus, Mulder visits Emily at her home and, with Anna as a witness, begins the interrogation. Emily claimed to have seen who took Andrew, stating that he went alone into the forest. Once alone with Anna, Mulder notices that Emily is a fan of the Teletubbies. Anna changes the subject and asks Mulder if he has children. He explains that he is the father of an older son. Then Anna mentions that, like Strong, they both grew up in the town and that her husband feels guilty about the case as he is obsessively protective when it comes to the town. In the middle of the conversation, when Anna steps away for a moment, Mulder discovers that Strong is an enthusiast of the town's witch history. Before leaving, Mulder observes how Emily points to the character of Mr. Smiles on the television, revealing that he was in the forest that day. Meanwhile, Rick starts his own investigation and, thanks to police data, identifies Melvin Peter as a possible suspect. Scully arrives at the scene and introduces herself to Strong to share her theory about a possible infanticide at the hands of Rick. However, Strong raises his voice, vehemently asserting that it is impossible. Scully insists, pointing out that it is common for the attacker's friends to be unable to imagine such crimes, as these individuals often live out their fantasies in private. Requesting his cooperation, Scully explains that when suspects are confronted, they tend to become violent against themselves. Faced with these insinuations, Strong agrees to let Scully talk to Rick, but just at that moment, they observe Rick speeding away without any explanation. They decide to follow him. On the way, Strong orders Rick to stop, but he doesn't listen. After driving through the town, Rick arrives at Melvin's house. Shortly after, Strong and Scully arrive at the location. The police chief manages to disarm Rick, who explains that he has found the suspect Scully was talking about. At that precise moment, Scully receives a call from Mulder informing her that he is in the forest. Suddenly, Mulder comes face to face with a wolf that stares at him for a few seconds before walking away. Later, when Mulder meets with Scully, she informs him of what happened. Rick discovered that Melvin, a convicted pedophile, never registered with the police when he returned to town last year, and his house is 2 blocks from the park. Despite this, Mulder expresses his skepticism, as the alleged homicide doesn't completely convince him. Strong obtains a search warrant and they return to Melvin's house. While investigating the rooms, they find photos of Melvin with children at parties due to his job as an entertainer, and rooms decorated in a childlike manner. Suddenly, behind a door, Mulder discovers a caged monkey and part of Mr. Smiles' uniform, including the mask. Even though Scully issues the arrest warrant for Melvin, Mulder remains unsatisfied, considering that the case seems too perfect. Meanwhile, at the Strong house, Anna is preparing lunch. Emily sees the purple Teletubby in her yard and decides to follow it. When Anna realizes, she discovers that her daughter is no longer there. They soon find Emily's body in the woods with the same animal predation marks that Andrew had. Seeing Emily there deeply affects Mulder, as he remembers having spoken to the girl in the morning when she was still alive. Moments later, Anna arrives at the scene and Strong has to intervene to prevent her from approaching Emily's body. Amidst tears and heart-wrenching cries, Anna blames Strong for everything, accusing him of being directly responsible for the tragedy. Strong, feeling the pressure of the accusations and the situation, orders that his wife be taken away from the scene to prevent the situation from escalating further. As the investigation continues at the scene, Mulder discovers more traces of salt scattered around the area and concludes that it is a magic circle used in witchcraft practices to summon spirits and demons. The salt, according to him, is used to protect the conjurer from the entities they have released. Scully, skeptical, expresses her doubts about this theory. However, when Mulder digs through the fallen leaves, he discovers that the salt surrounds an old tombstone shaped like a skull, indicating that they are in the middle of an ancient Puritan cemetery. Without hesitation, Mulder accuses Strong of having closed the case and concealed the trail of salt because he didn't want it known that someone was practicing witchcraft in the town. With no options, Strong accepts the truth and reveals that, although he allowed a demon to enter his soul and sinned against God, he never killed anyone, much less his own daughter. He confesses that he is a lustful and adulterous man and that he was having an affair with Diane. Despite Diane wanting to end the relationship, he insisted on continuing it. As proof of his innocence, he mentions that he was talking to Diane on the phone when Andrew disappeared. He firmly believes that he is now being punished for his sins. Having said that, Mulder comments to Scully that someone has cursed the town and that it's possible Strong has opened the gates of hell without realizing it. Meanwhile, Melvin returns home only to find it filled with journalists and police officers. He is immediately intercepted by Rick, who, consumed by anger and pain, begins to beat him brutally. Only when Melvin is covered in blood does Wentworth arrive to separate them. Melvin, barely conscious, claims that he never hurt anyone and that his conviction was for statutory rape, clarifying that the minor he was with gave her consent. However, the mob that has gathered around is driven by fury and begins to lynch Melvin. With no alternatives, Wentworth throws himself over Melvin, shielding him with his own body until the rest of the police and FBI agents finally arrive to control the situation. Even though it seems like things are calming down, Rick, taking advantage of a moment of confusion, pulls out his gun and shoots Melvin in the head, ending his life with a single shot. The scene is filled with a deathly silence as Melvin's blood mixes with the ground. Shortly after, the day of Rick's sentencing arrives, with all the agents as witnesses. Before the judge speaks, Mulder assures Scully that 2 injustices will be committed that day: the death of Melvin, an innocent man, and the release of Rick, as he knows that in a small town, justice is among friends. Mulder insists that the real culprit is Strong and reveals that he saw a hellhound, although Scully doesn't believe him. The time for sentencing arrives and the judge announces that due to Rick's exemplary work as a police officer and because witnesses assure that he will not flee, the bail for his release will be only $500,000. Mulder watches with resignation as his prophecy comes true. Upon leaving the courthouse, the agents encounter Wentworth dressed in civilian clothes. Wentworth confesses that he did not attend the hearing because he feels disgusted by what happened. Furthermore, he reveals that in the face of injustice, he decided to investigate and discovered that on the day Andrew disappeared, Melvin was at a birthday party 64 kilometers away. According to the videos, Melvin was still at the party when Andrew disappeared. Although he told Strong about it, Strong ordered him to leave things as they were. That night, when Rick returns home, he confronts Diane and makes it clear to her that he knows about her affair with Strong. Diane assures him that she ended it with him and that she was just confused, asking for forgiveness for being unfaithful. Rick asks her if her apology is for the infidelity or for the death of their son. After expressing his decision to leave her, Diane also decides to leave. In response to this, Rick decides to take up his gun and go confront Strong. In the middle of the road, Diane thinks she sees Andrew and suddenly brakes, causing the car to skid and overturn. Just at that moment, the wolf appears to witness the accident. Rick arrives at his boss's house and breaks in by force, demanding that Strong come out to face his revenge. At that moment, Rick begins to hear Emily's voice. While trying to find its origin, we see that he is being stalked by Mr. Smiles. Rick discovers him, but when he approaches, the puppet disappears and reappears in another direction. Even though Rick shoots at him, Mr. Smiles keeps moving as if nothing happened until he vanishes. The television turns on and Rick sees Mr. Smiles' show, where the puppet seems to inhabit hell. Just at that moment, Mr. Smiles returns behind him and Rick follows him. Moments later, Strong appears at the door pointing a gun at him. The agent's suspicions lead Mulder and Scully to visit Strong. Upon arrival, they find Rick's corpse at the door and a trail of salt in the yard. Mulder decides to investigate on his own inside the house, where he discovers the television tuned to Mr. Smiles' show and realizes that the witchcraft book has disappeared. With this evidence, Scully suggests that it might be a crime of passion, but Mulder remains convinced that doors to hell have been opened. Therefore, they decide to return to the forest. As they approach, they observe a wolf passing near them, lurking. At the same time, Strong finds Diane's car. He soon realizes that she is still alive and ventures into the forest after her, unaware that he has passed by Diane's corpse. Finally, Strong finds Anna surrounded by a circle of candles and the witchcraft book. She demands that he not stop her, as she must finish what she started, a spell against Diane and Strong. He blames her for having awakened something evil that she cannot control, but Anna insists that she has the power to stop it. At that moment, the wolf appears and lunges at Strong, sinking its fangs into his throat. When the agents finally arrive, they only find Anna next to the corpse and her book, promising that she can finish the spell. Meanwhile, behind Mulder, the wolf prepares to attack him, but as he recites his last prayers, Anna's body begins to burn like that of a witch. The fire causes the wolf to back away, and amidst the flames, the witchcraft book points to a wolf that, for some reason, does not burn. When the police arrive, Scully hands the book to Wentworth to use as evidence in the case. Mulder feels that she finally accepts his theory of modern witchcraft, but Scully believes that the town was simply a victim of human failings and the fragility of madness. Even so, recalling how Anna combusted, she admits that perhaps the gates of hell were opened. That said, as the agents leave the town, it is observed that the carousel where Andrew used to play begins to move on its own, enveloping the place in an aura of mystery and terror that will linger in everyone's memory.